GrowCFO is where finance leaders grow together. Join thousands of like-minded professionals using GrowCFO to access the combined knowledge and experience of the finance leader community. You can join us today at growcfo.net. Hello and welcome to the GrowCFO show. I'm your host, Kevin Appleby, and today's guest is coming to us all the way from Chile. I think, Francesco, you're the first Chilean guest or South American guest that we've ever had on the podcast.
Hi, Kevin. Thank you for having me. That's right. I'm originally Italian, but right now I'm based in Chile. So let's say I'm half Chilean. I'm really happy to be the first one in your podcast. Thank you for having me.
Which gives us an interesting story to talk about. And your career to get to become a divisional CFO in Chile has been quite a journey. How did that all start? Take us right back to the beginning of your journey.
Yeah, let's say, Kevin, that it was a little bit random. I didn't realize or decide to move to Chile in the past. So life took me here, and I'm happy of that. I reckon that probably everybody started when I was 14 or 15 years old, when I had a really nice trip to the States with my dad during summertime. We stayed like 1 month traveling. And in that period and at that young age, my horizon opened up, basically. So when I started studying at college, I had different experiences with different universities in Spain, University of Barcelona, as a visiting student. Then I had an internship in Madrid, in the central bank. And after that, I came back to Italy. And of course, I started working in a consulting company, one of the big fours, and then investment banking. And that's when quite randomly another opportunity to go abroad came in my path. So in the past, the SPA, which is now called We Build Group, talked to me, and they offered me to go and have a nice experience in Turkey, in Istanbul. And I think in that moment, I have to be really honest. I thought, okay, let's try that. I will stay 3 months, 6 months, have a nice experience, and then go back home with a little bit of savings in my pocket and a nice professional experience as well. And 10 years later, I'm still around the world. So how I got here, it was, as you said, Kevin, a long journey, because after Turkey, the company relocated me to South America. So I stayed 3 years and a half in South America, covering different roles in finance in the organization. And after that, I joined Impresa Pizzarotti, which is my current employer. And I served in Australia as Chief Financial Officer for Australia and the APAC region. And as I usually say, I left Chile from the door and I went back from the window, because with Impresa Pizzarotti, I came back to Chile to start up the business with other colleagues. And 2 years and a half later, I'm still here and enjoying Chile, and of course, enjoying the region, because in the last months, I had the chance to lead the finance strategy in all the South America region. So yes, Kevin, it was quite a long journey. It took 10 years to get here, and it was a little bit random, I reckon.
That's quite an international journey. So a trip to the United States ends up with you studying in Spain, going back to Italy, South America, Australia, back to South America via Istanbul. Wow.
Yeah.
So that is genuinely quite a bit of globetrotting. What is it about those different geographies that have given you kind of the biggest challenge? What do you see moving from region to region is the most difficult to handle?
Well, let's say that first of all, there is the relocation process, which also with a big company organization supporting you is never easy. So I think there is a quite big psychological effect, like living my life, which is the best part and probably the worst part of my job. So I'm always temporary wherever I go. I don't put big boundaries in the regions or cities when I live, because I know that at some point, probably I will have to relocate. At the same time, I have to be really fast, finding friends and building, a relationship wherever I stay. I don't have that long time path to take my time, no people, no places. Everything must be fast, And also, which is in some way really exciting to me. I really like and enjoy flexibility and changing and challenge myself. So this is what keeps me alive, let's say. On the other side, of course, there are different cultures. So imagine relocating from Turkey to South America, Spain, United States, and then Australia. People you're dealing with in your daily life and personal life are really different. I mean, really different point of view about religion, politics, cultural heritage, and everything. And this also applies on the job. So, of course, even if the company has many expats around the world, which are usually the management or top management, the biggest part of my colleagues are local people, basically. So I have to adapt myself not only in a personal perspective, but also in a professional one. So how you deal with people, how you manage people, how you try to motivate people, and also respect, of course, how they used to live life and work-life balance, which is also hugely different in the countries, is quite challenging. So I will tell you that when I first went to Australia, of course, it was a big change because there were a lot of people working. And from Italy, they were telling me that we were overstaffed, for example. A lot of barracks, really nice work-life balance. And from a headquarter, probably they didn't understood that. But that's the way it is. I mean, you have to adapt to the countries where you go to work and where you bring your organization.
What sort of challenges does Chile bring?
Well, Chile is a really nice country, it's a great country. I was able to speak Spanish before going to South America because I've been studying and working in Spain, but the language is different. I mean, it's South American Spanish. So I had to start almost from scratch with the language and, of course, get in touch with local people. Also was quite difficult because one of our main projects was, let's say, in one of the probably poorest and most dangerous part of the city. So you have to adapt also to the local environment. And apart of that, I have to reckon that at a cultural level, we are quite similar, I mean, with European and Italian. So there was not a great barrier. I reckon the biggest barrier was in Turkey, of course. And clearly, here, all the people have different characteristics. So you have to try and help to manage them. But I would say that in this case, I mean, when you change a lot of cities and countries, Kevin, you need the support of your colleagues. You need them basically to understand how people think, how you can be basically part of that organization and be, of course, a good performer yourself. And also this comes to motivate also the others to do better and better.
Would you say that working in South America, in terms of management techniques and the way organizations work, are companies generally on a par with the ones you'd find in Europe?
Let's say, Kevin, that I work for an Italian company. I've always have been working for an Italian company around the world. So, of course, we bring the culture of the headquarters. We bring, of course, processes and practices from the headquarters. So, of course, let's say we go global, but we stay local. So it's a little bit of a global approach. So we are not totally free to shape the organization as we would like, but of course we have strong boundaries with Italy. In that case, of course, compared to other organizations here in Chile, we are quite similar. So I don't see very, very big differences. I mean, the work-life balance, the processes are quite strict. Let's say that also in Chile, culturally speaking, we come, of course, from let's say a difficult political story, not from I would say quite a tough environment, with Pinochet and everything that happened just a few years ago. So the current generation and the old generation are really used to follow the rules and also the procedures. So as soon as you're clear with that, you're transparent with that, you give clear orders, you can expect that people is following that. I'm not saying that they will follow them like shutting up, but of course, internally, they know the value of following rules. basically. So this is really much helpful in a big organization like that one where I'm working. The downside is that, of course, you need a little bit of flexibility with people. So as soon as you give a job description to a colleague, they will follow it, of course. But in the case that you change a little bit, that's where flexibility issues come in. So also in this point of view is quite a little bit of finding a balance. I'm talking generally, everybody of us and all the colleagues around the world are different, but generally speaking, this is a little bit of the path that I've been finding here in Chile.
So Francesco, you work for Impresa, and this is where my Italian is not good, Impresa Pizzarotti. Now you're going to pronounce that properly for me.
That's perfect, Kevin. Impresa Pizzarotti, that's perfect.
What exactly does the business do?
So Impresa Pizzarotti is a company which has been founded more than 100 years ago. So is absolutely nothing further than a startup, I would say.
Yeah.
And Impresa Pizzarotti is one of the biggest general contractor in Italy and Europe.
Yeah.
So basically, we do focus on big construction projects.
Yeah.
Civil and also infrastructure projects. Also, the company has moving to new horizons, let's say, of course, to project with renewable energy or cutting-edge technology, data centers, etc., etc., etc. So, of course, also the general contractor world is moving from the really classic and typical core business, which were bridges, airports, hospitals, to also some kind of jobs with our, let's say, more modern and following the trends of the global economy. Impresa Pizzarotti is organized as a really big corporation. It's present in about 20 countries. I don't know exactly because every year and every month they close one, they open another. So it's about 20 countries. Here in South America, we're working in different countries. The headquarters of the Latin American region is Chile, in Santiago. And we have really interesting projects here, both in data centers, in the mining industry, with really important clients, hospitals, and also bridges. And so it's a quite big range of projects here in South America and around the world.
Some of your background, though, is in financial services. So how does that translate into what you're doing now? How does that experience work for you?
Yeah, it was a big change. I started having my career in corporate investment banking, which is a totally different world. Also in advisory with the KPMG in Italy. So I really like, let's say, the product. I said that in my very first interviews when I joined my first general contractor, just to get the job, probably, because they wanted to hear. But at the end of the day, I really feel what you're doing. I mean, you can see with your eyes the projects which are getting shape. You change the life of the people, of course, and we hope in a better way, because you build, of course, for example, in South American infrastructures, which were not existing. So you build something which gets lives better, like hospitals, like bridges, like airports. And I'm really proud, for example, when I travel in the Santiago's International Airport, because I work for it, So I'm a little bit critical about the airport because I know all the secrets, but it's a really, really honor and I really feel proud of what we're doing around the world. But, professionally speaking, it's a totally different world. I mean, when I first stepped in my first role in Turkey, I had to be basically a consultant inside the company. So I started interviewing everybody just to know how the company was working, how people were working, how they could interact within themselves. And, finance at the end of the day, it's pretty much similar in every organization. Of course, we have different gaps or financial standards to apply to different businesses. It's quite different, but still, I mean, coming from the finance industry, you can land with a quite nice luggage of experience, and you could bring something from the outside. Being a consultant, I've seen different companies, so I've tried to bring the best practices in the first general contractor where I work. And also, let's take in consideration that the same company in different countries, it's a little bit of a different company,
Yep.
So in every company or country you travel, you take the best and worst practices. So I think that one of my biggest added value is having the possibility to bring in the office and on the desk experiences in really different environments and really different businesses. I think that's what helps me to deal daily with the finance strategy in a general contractor.
Yeah. And this is something that actually fascinates us in GrowCFO. We've looked at the journeys of over 500 CFOs and how they've got to the top job and all the different experiences they've had in between. And certainly a recurring theme is make your career varied, different types of experience, different types of company. Don't be afraid to step outside of finance.
Absolutely.
And it all leads to a rounded experience. And I can see that you've got some tremendous experience in managing people in all sorts of different cultures. Now, just looking at what you're doing, you're looking at finance, accounting, mergers and acquisitions, tax and legal, internal audit, human resources, general services. That's a lot of things to be responsible for and must bring you into contact with a lot of people on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, that's very true, Kevin. And there is also the IT part, which is getting bigger and bigger,
Yeah.
because we want to learn new technologies to get the job done and to smoothen the operations. So yes, it's a quite big group of work. I reckon and insist that I will suggest to all new graduates to consider an experience in consulting or advisory, let's say, or M&A or whatever it says, because even if maybe you don't like the job, because, when you're an analyst, you don't get to see really fun stuff. It's not that sexy, let's say. But getting the possibility to talk with different people, different clients, dealing with different issues and trying to learn with different solutions, then we'll give you the opportunity when you go to the corporate world, as I did, to have that mental flexibility and probably also a little bit of professional practice to deal with all this different stuff. So you can put mustache on a hat when you talk to human resources, and then still it's the same Francesco, but I'm different when I'm dealing with our legal team. Just think that I was used to do this with external clients, and right now I'm doing it with internal clients, which are different departments, which also internally, in some cases, report to the finance department. So yes, sometimes we speak different languages, of course. I'm referring to technical language. We have different point of views. Let's not forget that we are a general contractor, so it's full of engineers. So we have, of course, a very, very, very different mindset. But still, we have to follow the same target. We have to follow the same vision of the company. So on a daily basis, we have to find a point of contact just to get the job done. It's challenging. Of course it is. Sometimes we have our differences, which is also interesting. I think hearing different opinions, for example, from an engineer, sometimes is totally new to me. And but still, they are, let's say, complementary capacities. That's what makes my team so strong, I guess.
So how big was the organization in Chile when you joined?
So when I rejoined Chile with Impresa Pizzarotti, it was the four of us. It was me, who I was appointed as Chief Financial Officer for the area, the new appointed the country manager, a general counsel, and a tender department manager.
From four people, you've grown to how many?
Currently, we are like 1,400 people within less than 2 years and a half. We got really important contracts with main clients in Chile, both local and internationals. especially in the mining sector. We are operating a copper mine in northern Chile, which is the biggest open pit copper mine in the world. So we're really proud of that. And as I said, with my CEO, we have been living 2 years in apnea, not even the time to breathe. And so talking to you right now, I look behind my back the past 2 years, and we have been growing like we didn't even expect it. It was challenging, of course. Yes, we had the support from the headquarters, which is good and sometimes it's bad because still the boundary gives you some rules to follow, which sometimes don't exactly work locally. But we had to start from scratch. So we finding the offices, trying to understand with consultants how to shape work contracts, finding bank loans, everything from scratch.
That is quite a challenge. I can see why a CFO with so much experience coming from so many different countries and having to get to know what happens locally can be a big advantage in that sort of environment. So as CFO for the region, how involved do you get in those individual construction projects?
So let's say that I get involved a lot within the seed stage, let's say.
Yep.
Especially when we have to find commercial partnerships with our companies, because in many projects, it's Impresa Pizzarotti and, of course, other companies. When the size of the project or the complexity, the technical complexity requires that. So, of course, we get engaged as the finance team and me as the finance leader to find the right partner. We do due diligence for the potential new partner. Then, of course, I'm heavily involved in the shaping of the commercial contract with the partner, which is basically an MOU. And that's where, for me, is one of the most critical parts, because this will shape the future of the project. I mean, the share that we have in the project, the position that we have in the organization, the possibility of consolidating by ERF 11, the amount of our stake in the project. So these are all elements that can change the success or not success of one project in our company. And after that, of course, there is also the startup phase where we have to land with loans. We have to find the people. In a general contractor, as a general contractor, we need a lot of capital expenditures. So we have to find leasing, leasebacks, acquire the equipment, and et cetera, et cetera. And I will say that after that, during the operational stage, of course, my presence in the project or as a supervisor goes a little bit down. First of all, because we have a finance team on site. So usually there is a chief financial officer for the project with this team. So if there are not big issues, of course, usually we speak daily, but we have quite strong reporting. So I get the report. Of course, I sit in the board of directors, and that's when basically I deal with mid-term or long-term decisions. So I don't get in the daily operations anymore.
I guess that changes a little bit if a project becomes distressed, if there's a problem.
Oh, of course. That's the funniest part. And as you can imagine, Kevin, this has been quite challenging years. The pandemic hit. After the pandemic, also the world changed a little bit. The suppliers, all the logistics, it has dramatically changed. So, of course, some of the project gets in a financial distress situation. It's my job to try and see that happening, to see that coming before it does. Of course, I have my colleagues on site, chief financial officer or deputy chief financial officer on site. And every time that we see the cash flow, me in particular as country or regional CFO, I try to track it with the CFO on site. There are a lot of what could go wrong. There are a lot of assumptions that could fall. There are a lot of problems that could arise. And so my job is trying to see that come. But of course, it can come, that's life. Projects in every field or in every industry are really risky. So it's not unusual that you see a really nice economic result at completion, but you have to get there and you need cash to get there. So if you see that cash is burning, you have to stop it and you have to do it really fastly, not to come in a situation where basically you have no other options to do that. It's quite critical. Of course, in times where interest rates are skyrocketing, there is a little bit of financial crisis around the world, regional, but also international banks falling. So I would not say that there is a credit crunch currently, but I would say that credit institutions and banks are way more risk adverse. So we, of course, try to get every project to either finance themselves, basically. Of course, we have different instruments and tools to try to get them on track. Like, for example, as I mentioned, of course, leasing, leaseback operations, factoring, confirming. We have a wide range of products, which usually, they have an impact on the economic result because they have a cost. So we try to avoid them, of course. But I would say that our biggest partner is the client. I will explain this. The client and the general contractor are aligned in terms of interests. We want to get the job done. They want to get the job done. So if you're a good general contractor, you're transparent. Of course, you're performing in terms of production and you get the trust of the client. I reckon that the first door to knock is the clients, because you can work on different contingencies that can arise and you were not expecting. For example, COVID. I think it's one of the biggest examples. So you can get variation orders, you can get extra cost paid, and what is sometimes very, very important, extension of time. Because if you're not performing not only economically, but also in terms of production, and you don't come along with the deadline given by the client, there are a lot of penalties and fines. So we always try to anticipate that. Having a smooth conversation and flow of information with the client, not hiding anything. So in a financial distress situation, we find the client's help. And I would reckon that in the last possibility is the company itself that needs to recapitalize or opening a working capital line for the project or basically put cash in that.
So, Francesco, you started from scratch, 4 people in Chile in 2020. Now, you've mentioned COVID a couple of times, but 2020, that can't be a good time to start an operation like this.
Yeah, that's very true, Kevin. So going a step back, I left Australia also because of COVID. They were closing the borders. So quite a country quite away from my homeland. At the same time, the company was starting the business in Chile. I had experience in Chile, so I was probably their best shot, and we came along with this decision. And we were, why we started in 2020, in the middle of the pandemic. We work in strategic industries in some part of the region. So, for example, here in Chile, we got very big contracts with Codelco, which is the main copper producer in the world. And it represents quite big part or percentage of the local or the regional economy, So they don't stop that sort of operations, never.
Right.
Of course, it was challenging in some way because on one side, the clients wants us to operate from 0 to 100 in 2 months. So to get the operations on site as soon as possible with really, really challenging deadlines. And on the other side, the logistics were kind of really crazy, not only challenging. For example, just bringing people in the region during COVID, which usually is business as usual, to get a visa and get in the country. In that very special period was something a little bit difficult. So starting from that, you can imagine all the logistics with the equipments, the subcontractors, etc., etc. So answering to your question, that kind of business never stops. So somebody has to do it.
Somebody has to do it, exactly.
Or also, when you are building a hospital, it's also on an airport. It's a very strategic asset for the country and the government. So in that point of view, as a general contractor, of course, COVID hit quite strongly. With the biggest amount of our clients, we never stopped operations because of that. I mean, thanks to the strategic role that this infrastructure have for the economy and the country itself.
So there are certain industries where it's always a good time.
Oh, yeah, of course. Just imagine, Kevin, that in the mining industry, we work 24/7.
Yes.
I mean, there are different shifts, but the operation never stops. Never.
Yeah. And my background originally is the chemical industry. Similar thing. Mm-hmm. You've got very, very expensive equipment. The assets are the key thing. And it's the return on the investment of the asset that's important. And you're producing whatever, in our case, it was plastic. So we're producing plastics 24/7. Yeah, nothing stopped it. Yeah. Francesco, this has been an absolutely fascinating story. Just in summing up, is there any one piece of advice that you'd give a younger version of yourself?
Yes, quite happy of what I did. If I had to give a piece of advice, also seeing the path of other colleagues which started with me, is to stay humble. I mean, it's something quite normal to say, maybe, I don't know, something not really interesting, but I reckon the biggest driver in my career has been just getting the job done. My biggest endorsement is my job. More talk and a lot of doing, getting stuff done. So stay humble. Probably you will be in places or in positions which you don't like at all. If the management and the company is smart and intelligent, they will understand that you're making an effort, that you're taking a little sacrifice, and probably it will pay off. So stay humble, get the job done, and that's it. And of course, try to enjoy the journey. Have fun.
Francesco, the humble Francesco Zappala, thank you very much for being this week's guest on the GrowCFO show.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for having me.